Well, thank you for your patience in there, and thank you, by the way. I assume that we took longer than whatever I predicted. Okay.
No problem.
My first question, if you can think back to when we were in the room together, is there anything that you maybe wanted to say in there but decided not to? Anything you'd like to say now that you think I should hear?
I can't think of anything right now.
Anything they say surprise you?
Well, the thing that puzzled me, frankly, was the emphasis that Mumbai's counsel placed on this sort of other agreement.
The mediator talked at length with MedPro's lawyer and vice president about the legal issues in the case and MedPro's understanding of the contract. She also asked about the company's business goals, when it began its relationship with Mumbai, and at present. After more than an hour, the discussion turned to bargaining.
It would be helpful to me to have a number to go back with.
Well, here's where I am on that, and we've spoken about this. I'm not sure that I really feel comfortable being the first one in here with a number. I would really like to see a number from them that's framed by the realities we've just been talking about.
Yeah, I mean, they did make a formal demand just prior to the mediation, right, of, I believe, $1.6 million. So I know that if I go back in there without a number for you, they're going to say, well, we said $1.6 million, and then what are they going to say?
Well, normally I would understand and read that as an opening proposal, but it's a number that's so unreasonable in terms of what we've talked about, how we would calculate and measure the damages, even if this were deemed to be breach, which we really don't think they can show, that it's hard for me to treat it as a number that we can respond to. And that's why, as I said, I'm reluctant to be what it feels like to me as being the first one in.
So you're sort of saying it doesn't count?
Yeah, it's kind of a magical number.
A magical number, yeah, it's a magical number. Of course, to them, the magical number is real. Let me just say two things, okay? One is that I do understand that it doesn't seem real and why respond to a fake number. But if we both do that, we're just never going to get anywhere. I'm going to spend my time, your money and time going back and forth and saying, please, can I have a number? Please, can I have a number? And nobody wants to bid against themselves, and we'll just get nowhere fast. So somebody at some point is going to need to step up to the plate. And I think I'm going to have a lot of trouble getting them to do what they would characterize as bidding against themselves. Do you understand?
Yeah, I certainly see the difficulty of your position.
But let me say something positive along those lines, and that is that there's a fair amount of research out there that tells you that the person that puts, or the party that puts the first serious number on the table actually has a negotiation advantage. That first number out there anchors things. And so the first number is important. And so what I'm going to suggest is give me a first number, but when you formulate it, disregard the 1.6.
Just
Make believe it's not
sense
there.
Of a real first number.
Yeah, think about where you think you'll end up. Not where you'd want to end up, but where it might be reasonable for you to end up at the end of the day, all things considered, and then pick a first number that would head you there. And then that's what I would ask you to do.
I think this.
You want to talk about it?
We might need to talk about it.
Okay, that's fine. Well, I knocked on the door and you said you were ready, and do you have a number for me?
Well, we've talked about the frames of reference that you used, and the number that we feel we can put out there, given all of my concerns and reluctances, is $50,000. And I can talk to that if you would like, and sort of explain how we got there, what it signifies.
You gave me a number. I asked you for a number.
I mean, we're going back to this kind of worst case scenario that you worked through with us, which is worst case.
Right.
After they show liability, which we don't think they can show, and a measure of damages that's at the far end of these multiple ways of terminating, gets us to $280. That's the outer limit. And I think if this is a number to get us framed, the number that it needs to be is in that $50,000 range.
Okay. Let me just I appreciate that $50,000 is not an inconsequential sum of money, especially if actually you had the right to terminate in the 30 days. In which case you would either owe nothing or $20,000 or something like that. Am I right? What do you suspect their response will be?
Who knows?
My problem, right?
Exactly. I don't think they're going to be thrilled with
Right.
it, and I think part of what we're struggling with is their expectation of a future business relationship income stream that's just terribly unrealistic.
And you want to send a message that this is not about that.
Yeah.
One of the things that worries me a little bit is that they'll hear you're 50 and think, oh no, they'll only ever pay 75 or 90 or something like that. And so I'm worried a little bit that the 50 may send an even lower signal than maybe you would have intended. What do you think about that one?
You know, I'm concerned about it getting up over, and you know, if there's a number or a reference point that you want us to think about, you know, I'm certainly happy to do that.
Let me just say, one of the things that I'm thinking is that if it would be reasonable to settle the case in that 280-ish range, then maybe you would want to start at around 100, which still gives you plenty of room to go up. But you know, let me just say, and you don't have to do it now, but one of the ideas here is that you want to offer enough so that if they're at all reasonable, which we don't really know yet, but if they are thinking rationally,
That they might come back.
that it gives them enough hope to hang in there. And so that's my concern about the 50, whereas about 100, you know, maybe they would engage a little bit.
Now, I certainly understand what you're saying, and 100 sounds different in perhaps an important way that allows them to have a toehold.
Right, that's what I'm thinking.
And I think we would just need to talk about that. No, you go ahead.
We just feel like we can't go above the 50. They're not operating on real numbers, and we don't want to encourage that.
So you don't want to get into real numbers because they're not. Listen, I'm not arguing. That makes sense. I get it. Okay. Could backlash, could not. Let's see what happens. You're clearly sending a message. But let me just say one thing. It's always nice to have a reason for a number. We used $20,000 a month before to come up with the 14 months.
Sure, the worst case.
Yeah. If I look at the 90-day termination idea, that's 3 months. If I multiply that by $20,000 a month, I get $60,000. It might be nice for me to be able to keep them tied to the contract, say you're tied to the contract, and come back with 60. Could you do that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess
Can I do that?
a way of packaging that is to say, you know, it's either immediate termination or an intermediate view is that 90 days. And
Right.
are you
That
comfortable
makes
with
much more
that
sense,
going up? So that would be going up 10 from what we talked about.
And actually, and I can characterize that as good faith. You know, they could have stuck down with the 30, but they're coming up to what would be 90 days. I'll do that. I'll try that.
Okay, that sounds good.
Great.